A recent Bloomberg article says that passing the CFA exams doesn't make you a better investor. Does that sound right? The article cites a study that we're going to get into later in this video, which shows that fund managers that have the Chartered Financial Analyst designation are less likely to perform well than other managers who have not taken those exams. Hey, real quick, before we get into the video, I want to make you aware of some live streaming that I'll be doing on a new educational live streaming platform called Lighthall in the next week or so. Lighthall is just a website that lets people live stream like Twitch or YouTube Live would let you, and I've considered doing either of those things in the past, but they don't seem to exactly work with what I do here on YouTube. Lighthall has an interface that's a little more focused on coaching or education. The course I've created is on CFA study routines, study strategies, tips and tricks, all those types of things. Some of the things that I've talked about in YouTube videos in the past, but also a little bit of new content that I haven't reviewed before. Lighthall is totally free for you to sign up on. As a full disclosure, Lighthall is not sponsoring this video or paying me to mention this. However, they do give me a referral fee based on users that end up attending my courses, my live courses on their platform. You just create your account and say, yeah, I'm going to attend any of AJ's 3 classes in this course that I've created, or all 3 of them. Even if maybe you're not actively studying for a CFA exam, just feel free to come in and join and hang out. You can talk live chat with me and I'll be answering questions there. I'm excited to do it. Back to the topic at hand, the study that the Bloomberg article is citing reviewed the performance records of over 6,000 fund managers, many of which who are not CFA charter holders, and then a smaller portion of which who were CFA charter holders. And the study found that having the CFA charter was not statistically significant in predicting outperformance of benchmarks, whereas experience or tenure, years in the business, in the practice, were predictive of that. One theory that was posed in the Bloomberg article is that the CFA exams have become much more popular as of late, like in the last decade, and so the most experienced fund managers, the people with 30 and 40 years of experience who have had the best performance track records, at least in the group that was studied here, were less likely to pursue the CFA exams earlier on in their career. So they sort of considered the CFA to be a proxy for inexperienced fund managers relative to those who didn't have it. That explanation makes a lot of sense to me, but I don't think that's the primary reason why we might see fund managers who have the CFA designation outperform their benchmarks less often. Assuming that taking all 3 CFA exams and completing the CFA program can adjust or shift how someone thinks or makes decisions, we would have to agree that people who have completed the CFA program, especially level 3, have been conditioned to a lot of material and content on diversifying a portfolio. And I don't just mean the general diversify your portfolio type diversification that people talk about. I mean statistically significant diversification as measured by a lot of different formulas that come up in the quantitative methods sections of the CFA exams. And then in the portfolio management books, when the content talks about optimizing a portfolio based on those metrics that you earlier learned how to calculate, it can certainly adjust the types of positions or the concentration of positions that a fund manager might select. So something I would like to see from this study is, of those non-CFA chartered fund managers who were more often than the others outperforming their benchmarks, how concentrated were their portfolios, what were the risk parameters around the superior performance that they achieved? Because I would argue it's going to be less likely that CFA charter holder fund managers are going to take outsized amount of risk, and sometimes you need outsized amounts of risk to beat benchmarks. So maybe you could argue that CFA charter-holdered fund managers are more aware of statistically significant risks to a portfolio and therefore more responsible in how they take and where they take risks. Another major point that needs to be discussed, which the Bloomberg article did not get into, is that when you're a fund manager, you're really only focusing in on 1 or 2 of the 10 sections of the CFA exams. Think about it. Someone running a long-short hedge fund focused on emerging market companies is probably on a daily basis utilizing the material from the equity section and then maybe the economic section. And that's about it. You're definitely not using anything from fixed income. You're definitely not using anything from alternatives unless it's like a real estate fund or something like that. I'm thinking of a stock picking fund. Or say a fund manager who works on a government bond mutual fund. They're really probably only using the information taught in the fixed income section of the CFA exams. And I know the CFA curriculum wraps all of the material together in some ways. And so there's going to be bits and pieces here or there, but primarily day-to-day responsibilities is going to be focused in on the one section of the CFA curriculum that corresponds with the asset class that their fund invests in. So all that is to say, if you think of CFA charter holders as being masters across the 10 topic areas that the CFA exams typically cover, Well, you're really only using 1 or 2 of those topic areas to make decisions in the management of your fund. And so in that case, the other 8 sections of the CFA curriculum would be useless for the purposes of this study, and therefore the premise of the study itself could be potentially overstating the impact that the CFA exams have on a fund manager. A different variable that this study found to be statistically significant in predicting outperformance of fund managers is if they had highly technical degrees from top-rated universities like in math or physics. And in reality, you're not using any physics information to make investing decisions, and you're really not using that much math information to make investing decisions. My theory is that the only reason that those 2 factors may have been statistically significant is just because you have to be extremely smart to attend a top university, especially in a highly technical field like that. So really, you're just saying that the people that are in the top 1/10 of 1% of the IQ spectrum have had the best investment performance, and I think that sort of makes sense. It's not related to the content of their university degrees, it's just related to the fact that they're really, really smart. Now, the way ZeroHedge.com phrased the results of this study is that earning the CFA charter makes you worse at investing, since having the CFA charter is correlated with worse investment performance. That terminology, while maybe like legally accurate, I think in reality is just them twisting the results or the rhetoric from the findings of this study. More accurately, they should be talking about years of experience in the industry being correlated to investment performance, rather than this designation that is notoriously held by people with 10 years or 5 years or less years of experience in the industry. And possibly because of the sort of rude terminology used in that Zero Hedge article, a spokesperson from the CFA Institute made a comment about the results of this survey. They said that the CFA program represents a demonstrated and proven pathway to a successful career in investment management, and that other pieces of academic research have arrived at the opposite conclusions to this study. I don't know exactly what other pieces of research that spokesperson was referencing here are, because I have seen some other material that shows that there's not a positive correlation between earning the CFA charter and outsized investment returns. Otherwise, you'd see a lot more people probably starting to claim that the CFA does, in fact, allow you to provide superior investment performance, even though we know it doesn't, right? But the point is that this spokesperson from the Institute sort of tried to defend the CFA program and say, hey, we are still a really good name in town. And personally, I was kind of glad to see that. While I was a little bit surprised to see the Institute make a public statement about this study, or maybe in response to these 2 articles that were posted, I'm glad they did it, because as a CFA charter holder, I want to see the Institute backing up this credential that I worked so hard to achieve, but also I definitely believe is a great way for people to educate themselves and build a not just solid base, but really an exceptional base of finance knowledge to further their careers in the industry or to break into the finance industry. Trust me, I can tell you firsthand, hundreds of thousands of people would tell you firsthand, it is extremely helpful to go through the program when you work in finance. It's just not necessarily going to make you a better investor in terms of investment returns than fund managers who have been around for 30 or 40 years that did not pursue the CFA charter. It's not going to make you surpass some of the best and most experienced investors overnight, or within 2 or 3 years, I should say. So this Bloomberg and then the Zero Hedge article are similar to things we've seen in the past. One article being from Bloomberg that are really trying to knock on the CFA program. And I always feel like the authors of these articles, who are now financial publication writers, probably attempted the CFA exams in the past and were unable to pass them. I only mention this because someone who failed out of a program that they once tried to pursue and complete is going to be far more likely to speak or write publicly negatively about that very program, right? They have their feelings hurt. So when you have this study that compares younger people in the industry to older people in the industry, many of those younger people having the CFA charter, and it gives you the results that the newer people are not better than the more experienced investors, you're almost definitely going to have these butthurt journalists writing articles like these 2 saying that the CFA program is useless. It's just a clickbait type of rhetoric, so I'm clickbaiting it in the opposite direction on this very YouTube channel. And just like the CFA Institute themselves, I'm defending the CFA charter and saying it is definitely still worth it, assuming that you want to be working in a finance field related to the content that the CFA exams cover. Hey, don't forget to create your account on Lighthall and hang out with me during the 3 live stream classes I'm doing as a part of my CFA Study Approach course there. Again, it's totally free for you to sign up. I get an incentive fee for the students that I bring over to their platform that sit in on the classes that I'm doing, and I'd love to just hang out and talk with some of you live there that I can't really do on like Twitch or YouTube Live, things like that, because it's more entertainment related. Please don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thanks for watching.